Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Strategic Business Influencer, my series for leaders who know that in today's evolving world, trust is the greatest competitive advantage. I am excited to announce that today's guest is Tanya M. Miller, president and co-founder of PrimeBank of Texas. Since launching the bank in 2021, Tanya has led its strategy, culture, and growth, raising capital, expanding into new markets, and building a high-performing team that is redefining what a community bank can be. With more than 20 years in banking, Tanya has done it all, starting as a teller to a leading credit operations to now overseeing regulatory compliance for major institutions. She is also a former senior financial examiner with the Texas Department of Banking, giving her a rare 360 perspective on the entire banking industry. Recognized as a 2024 Austin Business Journal Women in Business nominee, Tanya is known for leading through complexity with clarity, discipline, and vision. She also invests deeply in her community, championing financial literacy, small business support, and the next generation of banking leaders. So Tanya, I am so excited to have you on the series today. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm excited.
Well, I want to talk about when you first co-founded PrimeBank in 2021. So this is right in the middle of just a rapidly changing financial landscape. What inspires you to take that leap and start a community bank from the ground up?
Sure. So actually, it goes back to the prior year, to 2020, which we all knew what was going on during that time frame. My business partner and I were with an institution that was in the process of a merger. We were the institution being acquired. So we had talked on several occasions where you just, you're dreaming big and you're like, one day we're going to, do this for ourselves. And we're going to, go out and own a bank. And so we were going through that merger, and mergers can be challenging, especially when you're the person being acquired. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of, people who work for you looking to you for answers and things that all of a sudden you don't have the answer to. So very interesting time, very, emotional time as a leader and within an organization. And, all of that kind of coming together, we kind of kept talking and reaching out and checking in with each other. And eventually we're like, okay, let's just do this for ourselves. Like, let's just control our own destiny. So kind of the idea of controlling your own destiny, starting to take that hard work and ambition and it be something you're investing in yourself. And so it was an exciting opportunity to do that. I don't know that I would choose for anyone to do that in COVID. But, quitting your job in the middle of 2020 may not have been well advised, but it has worked out for us. So,
yeah, well, it definitely has. Y'all have been tremendously successful, and I just think that it's such a big leap to go from one day we'll do this to actually putting it into action.
Yes.
And as you said, that's terrifying in the middle of a global pandemic.
Yes.
One thing that I respect so much about you and admire is that you have worked in nearly every role possible in terms of the banking industry, from teller to chief credit officer to regulator. How has that full spectrum of experience really shaped the way that you lead today, especially with PrimeBank?
I always feel like a singular perspective is often short-sighted. And, unfortunately, in many industries, not just in the financial industry, a lot of people who rise to the top from one silo of the industry and don't really get a full picture of, what everyone else within the organization contributes and the importance of, the different jobs along the way and the challenges of those different jobs along the way. So I think it's been really beneficial to me to, understand what each of those roles face each day from a day-to-day, job function, and then how they, attribute to the overall success of the organization. So sometimes I feel like I have just a little bit better insight into those people who, work for me all the way down to those front ranks, and how their day-to-day challenges, can be made easier or better through a certain policy procedure, and different leadership styles. So, I think that for me, it just gives me a really good perspective from start to finish of how, each person that's reporting up the chain views their day and what challenges they have and how we can make that easier for them and how we can set them up for success with just a little bit better understanding of their day-to-day job.
Yeah, and I think that's so special that you have that unique perspective of being in their shoes, like you said, in past organizations. And I'm curious too, what was it like going from, someone who was executing a specific function to now being, a key leader, a co-founder in the bank?
It's a little bit like a juggling act on it.
Yeah.
You get a little comfort in kind of having that very direct area and, certain responsibilities and know that you're really good at those things. You're a subject matter expert at those things, to kind of taking that entrepreneur role where you're all of a sudden responsible for everything, whether you're good at it, have ever done it, have any experience whatsoever. So it was really fun, even though it was hard in the middle of it, of taking on different things because, I went from, we're ordering supplies and fixing the printer and, finding out if we have enough trash cans for a new office and things like that, which is way out of the scope of being a banker. In my day-to-day, credit experience of that I was used to. So it's been a lot of fun. And it's been a challenge. It's just, something new every day that you don't know the answer to. So the, things that become exhausting when you're starting up from scratch is just the number of things you have to go research or go find a lifeline that can help you with something you've never done before. So you have to be really vulnerable in asking questions and not caring if they're dumb questions. And I would preface a lot of times when I call a friend in the industry and say, I know this is probably a stupid question, but, just hear me out because I do not know what this is. And they were very, very nice to me during my Lifeline reach outs and to help me and to provide that very detailed response back to me so I could figure it out and move on to my next thing that I was juggling. So that was what saved me, and figuring those things out and kind of learning to be nimble and flexible in the fact that I didn't know all the answers.
Mm-hmm. Thank goodness for those lifelines, right? Because we get there so much faster supporting one another. And I love how you talked about, hey, I need to know how many trash cans. It's so funny. And almost every interview I've had for this series, an entrepreneur has talked about, hey, I've been taking out the trash, or it always has to do with something, along those lines that we've been doing as entrepreneurs. So I love that. In the banking industry, what y'all do is so high trust with your customers. Trust is really everything beginning to end, especially in a community bank. So what's been your most effective strategy for earning and keeping the trust of your customers and really your team as well?
I think with our customers, of course, a lot of times people think of that going to get a loan or, starting a new financial relationship because of something exciting that's going on, like you're expanding your company, you're adding to, your main building or adding another location or a new piece of equipment, or even just something fun like you're buying a house for, your household needs or a new car. But oftentimes we're part of, those challenges in life and some of the, hardships that people face where they're trying to figure out things when things did not go in the direction that they wanted them to. So I think oftentimes the best approach is to be as honest as possible, to provide wise counsel, whether it's in a good time or bad time, and to get them answers as quick as possible. So, I think for our team is backing them and letting them make those decisions, as appropriate and be able to answer those needs because, we're growing quickly. It becomes a point in time where, the people at the top can't make every decision. So you have to provide some ability to take ownership at different levels in the company to make sure that we're all on the same page of what we're trying to accomplish, which is meeting the needs of the customer. Like I said, whether it's in, a time that they're celebrating or a time that they're they're, facing challenges is getting them those answers quickly and being reliable. And that's where we get to set ourselves apart as a community bank, is that flexibility and that kind of speed to service. Because we are small, we can make quick decisions. We can come together, put our heads together in just a few minutes and give back to the customer if we need to. But I think a lot of times that's what builds trust, is knowing that we're there, we're going to give them wise counsel, and that we're going to follow through on what we say we're going to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I would love to get from your perspective, just from the banking side of things. I think what's so unique about you is you're a banker making these decisions, but you're also a business owner yourself. And so what should business owners really look for when they're looking for the right banking partner?
I think it kind of falls back to the previous question, is just, is your bank partnering with you? Are they helping you make those big financial decisions? Are they talking through structure and things that could affect your ability to run your company in the future? The way we look at it is we're not going for it. And I don't think any bank is looking to, just get as big of fees and, the most beneficial structure to us. And, we of course have to protect ourselves, but a lot of times we find we're, helping in those challenging situations where a business owner is taking a structure that's not able to be performed on from another bank. And so they've set themselves up for failure. They put themselves in a cash flow situation that's not positive for them. And different things can happen along the way. So we try to, partner with our customers, let them know what we think is advantageous for them while talking to them about what their long-term goals are, what their strategy is, and trying to make sure that we understand from a financing standpoint what their goals are, so that we're not hindering those down the road. I think that builds trust, like we talked about. And also, once they realize, like, hey, this is actually to my benefit, this is something that is going to allow me to be more successful, they're going to continue to come to us. They're going to send their friends to us, and it just kind of organically builds those relationships over time. If you're treating people right and, you have their best interests in mind, you're just going to end up having a very successful way of building your business.
Yeah, for sure. And, I know that PrimeBank has grown quickly, but y'all have done it while holding on to your values as a community bank. How do you balance that innovation that's happening in the industry and expansion in the community while maintaining that relationship-driven approach?
It's certainly a challenge. There's technology needs and things like that. And we're a very small mom and pop size, company. When you really look at it, even though we're a bank, we have about 27 full-time employees, and 3 executives. And so, it's really that next layer of people that we've brought on, and bringing on the right people, who have, a similar mindset, take ownership of their area and their ability to deliver to a customer very personally. Because if we don't have the right people in place, we're all wearing so many hats. You can certainly get bogged down, can not be meeting those deliverables because we have projects going on and day-to-day responsibilities going on. And, we just, as a culture, have decided that, the customer comes first. So, you get the right people on the bus. They're willing to work the overtime to finish the project and do those things so they can serve the customer, during the working day. And those people are hard to come by sometimes, who take ownership over it and make sure that they're, doing their job the way that I would do it or the other executives would do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It all starts and ends with people, right?
Yes. Get the right people on the bus, get everybody going in the same directions.
Yes, absolutely. And no one knows better than you that the financial industry is very heavily regulated.
Yes.
But y'all have managed to keep PrimeBank nimble, as you talked about. What's your approach in navigating regulations or new regulations that come to fruition without really losing that momentum of a scaling company?
I think it's just staying on top of the industry news that's out there and really being prepared as things start rolling out. We have a great compliance team. So I certainly don't do it all myself, but my background is an asset to us to kind of weed through, all the minutia that's coming at us because there's so many changes right now with the political environment that we're in. There's something new coming and then it's not coming, and you're just trying to keep up with all those things every day. So, we've got great trade associations and things like that help us kind of look at what applies to us at our size of bank and what we should be preparing for. So we do a lot in our strategic planning of knowing what's coming down the pipe and also preparing for that, as quickly and as we can, and looking for resources within the industry. But really, it does help to have the background from the regulatory side that can just say, okay, this is, the meat of what we have to do is this, and this is the minimum that we have to be able to make sure that we're doing consistently and doing it every time. And really just making sure that, we're not getting bogged down in red tape and limiting ourselves because of lack of understanding of the regulation or trying to over apply it. And I think you end up in larger institutions having that kind of push down from the compliance area where they're not as much a part of the strategy of the business side of things. And they're just worried about, making sure that we're following the letter of the law every single time, which is very important. But there's a lot of different ways to apply that. And a lot of times you can go way overkill in different areas. And if you don't fully understand what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine that's, oftentimes a balancing act. As you're planning strategically. Yeah,
absolutely. The risk reward plays into everything we do in the financial institution. You cannot have zero risk or you're not going to have a successful business. I teach bankers at many different graduate level banking programs. And that's the one thing we focus on all the time is, you're never going to be a successful business without taking risk. You're not going to be a successful entrepreneur without taking risk. So you have to be, willing to accept a certain level of risk in order to reap the rewards down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as you mentioned, you teach a lot of bankers out there. You're on a lot of, leadership committees or executive positions and other organizations, even outside of PrimeBank. And you are also an Austin Business Journal Women in Business nominee. So you've been recognized tremendously for your leadership, well-deserved recognition. What leadership qualities do you believe have been most critical for starting and scaling PrimeBank? And how do you foster those amongst your team?
I think the one part of my leadership style that has been really beneficial in the last 4 years of starting up has been just the collaborative nature of communication. Just, open door. None of us know what we're doing right now. Let's all figure this out together. No judgment, bring all your ideas. Everything's welcome. We've, kind of figured everything out as we're going. And we've opened up to, our management teams of any idea, bring it forward. Let's see if it works. If we know that we're growing quickly. We're having to be flexible. We're having to, overextend ourselves sometimes and ask our people to overextend themselves sometimes. And so I think just leaving that door open to say, hey, I think we could do this better. I think we could, make these changes, be more efficient, whatever it is. And to feel like we're open to those things. And I think from our executive approach, we're very collaborative. I think too, our employees see us when it becomes necessary to say, okay, I'm just going to make this decision so we can move on. They understand that sometimes that's part of leadership too, is, just taking the reins, being decisive. Right now we don't have time to listen to everyone's opinion, but when we do, we're certainly going to sit down and hash it out. So there's a little bit of balancing that, but as much as we can, we try to remain collaborative and just open door, and everybody has, a say at least to give an opinion. And so, and a lot of times we're better for it because you just get a much more diverse, view of what's going on in everybody's department and how we can work together to get to the end goal.
Absolutely. And I think it has a lot to do with as well, you instilling that in the culture from the beginning. And, I've found, and you maybe see this too, even when there's discussions and disagreements, which there should be in those collaborative conversations, when a decision is made at the end of that, everyone knows they've been heard, which is also incredibly powerful as well.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, I hope that at least our staff sees us as, we want their opinion. We want to make the best decision possible, that everybody's a stakeholder. But also at the end of the day, that us as leadership, we make that decision, we own it, and I think that's huge, is that no matter what goes wrong in this bank, there's a couple of us who are held responsible. Always, it is always our decision and, our ownership of that decision. And we've got our teams back regardless of what happened in the situation. And so I think when you're moving as fast as we have been, mistakes happen. But taking ownership of that from the top is, I think, extremely important to foster that collaborative environment. Because if something goes wrong and you took someone's idea and then they felt like it was their fault because we decided to make that decision, move forward with their idea, then you shut down those lines of communication going forward. And that's never the idea. So I think taking that responsibility and ownership of the decision at the top, regardless of how that decision was made within the group, is extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that is incredibly powerful. For anyone who's listening, who is thinking about starting a new venture, whether it's banking or in another industry, what lessons from your journey would you pass along about building a business that can last?
I would say it's not easy, or everyone would be doing it. It's certainly a challenge. And I've mentioned, using those lifelines. Certainly, my network of people within the industry, and even friends and family who I could lean on during hard times, were very key to being able to do this, being able to get up and face the next day after a really hard day in the very beginning. For me, I find my strengths, outside of myself, faith and family and those things. And I think if you're going to go into something that's hard and challenging, and it's going to stretch your knowledge and your capabilities and all those things, you really do have to find, wherever you pull your strengths from internally has to be bigger than you, because it's really easy to give up on ourselves. But it's not easy to give up on those who are depending on us. And so I think you have to continue to go at it the next day. Like I said, use every lifeline you have. Be willing to be vulnerable and say, I don't know. Because you're, only going to get to success by failure. Then you have to be willing to fail. And you're going to feel like a failure in the beginning, because there's days you just don't feel like you know what you're doing. You feel like you failed everyone around you. But you have to show up the next day, and you have to take on the next day and put that behind you. We talked a lot in the first year that we didn't just, take inventory of our successes. It was always the next thing on the to-do list, and we haven't gotten to this yet. And, I can't believe we did this wrong. And we did a lot of that every day and every week. And, you just weren't where you wanted to be as fast as you wanted to be there. And then you look back and look at what you did accomplish. And so you kind of have to pull your head up out of the day-to-day and what you're feeling like you're failing at or not getting to, and say, take ownership of what you did accomplish, and, really take inventory of those wins, because you can get really bogged down in the challenge and not celebrate your victories, which helps you get through those hard times.
Absolutely. It's so much about resilience, perspective, mindset. And I love that you touch on every one of those things. And the first thing that you said, if it was easy, everybody would do it. It's so true. No, not at all. There are two questions that I love to ask every leader, and I'm excited to hear your answers as well. The first one is, who are you in addition to being a co-founder?
I feel like I wear a lot of hats these days. So that's a very long list of things, but I would say the ones that are important to me are certainly mom and wife, friend, mentor, hopefully leader to those around me. I think that you are a lot of things when you're a woman business owner and entrepreneur. You have a lot of people depending on you. And, for me, balancing those things out and making sure that they're all a part of who I am and that I'm not, overcommitting to one of those and letting the other slide is really something I try to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And then my second question for you is, what is the impact that you want to have at the end of every day?
I think it's just to leave everything I have out there, whether it's at work or whether it's at home, whatever I can contribute to that day, do my very best, reach down in that inner strength and find my faith, find whatever I have to do to just do the best job I can. And make sure that, when I leave the office or when I go to bed at night on either job, whether it's work or being, a mom and a wife, that I feel like I've, given everything I can and then get up the next day and do the best that I can do the next day.
Yeah, that's all we can do, right?
Yes. You can't have a great day every day.
That's right. That's right.
Start over.
That's right.
Not everything as a leader is positive. You have challenges
Completely.
as an employer and, a mentor and, a mom, all those things every day. But you can only do your best and then you've got to get back up and do it again.
Yeah. And it takes so much to have that mindset and to make that decision every day. And so I appreciate you just sharing so much wisdom with us and your experience. You come from such, a highly regulated, highly specialized space with so much experience. And so I just felt like this was packed full of wonderful nuggets for entrepreneurs out there. I'm curious if, Tanya, if anybody is looking to learn more about you or PrimeBank of Texas, where should they go?
Certainly check out our website or social media. We're at prime.bank on the web. And then we have Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And we share a lot of our community involvement there and then kind of what we're about and who we are. So we'd love to help anybody out with any of their financial needs.
Amazing. Yes, y'all be sure to check out prime.bank, which is an incredible URL, by the way. And just thank you so much for being on this series. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Yes, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Alrighty, y'all. We'll see y'all next time.